I've already been introduced. My name is Samantha Perahia. I'm Head of Production UK at the British Film Commission. I'll talk to you a little bit about the British Film Commission first and foremost. We are predominantly government funded, Department for Culture, Media and Sport, UK Trade and Investment, lottery funding via the BFI, and also we have commercial sponsorship from UK and US companies. And our role is to maximise and support the production of major international feature film and high-end television productions in the UK. We're also responsible for promoting and supporting the UK infrastructure, and some of our partners are here from UK Screen who represent the facilities industry in the UK. And we're also responsible for liaising between the government and the industry on any policy issues or legislative issues that impact on production. And that can be anything from feature film and television tax reliefs, through to immigration, through to working with children and animals. Very, very diverse. What do? We provide free production support, bespoke production support on a case-by-case basis for all our international clients, and that's usually UK, US studios and television companies. We have a team based in the UK. We have a London head office, but we have office at Pinewood, and we work a lot around the whole of the United Kingdom. And we also have an office based with the UKTI team out in Los Angeles. As I've said, we provide a lot of guidance on the UK film and tax relief, which is one of the things that opens doors to maximise production in the UK. We also help source crew, facilities, locations, studios, etc. We have a lot of commercial and public partners throughout the UK. As I've already said, UK Screen Association, Production Guild of Great Britain. We have 5 screen agencies around the UK who provide enormous amounts of support for filming on the ground in the UK, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And as I've said, we work very, very closely with central government and local government to ensure that policies are in place which help us maximise the level of investment through film and television production. So what I've been asked to talk to here about today is just an overview of the state of the film and television production in the UK. To be clear, the British Film Commission is funded by government in order to bring inward investment into the UK. So we work predominantly with internationally financed film and television. There is a very, very healthy domestic market, especially in domestic television content. So we will touch on that a little bit. But predominantly I'm talking about bringing investment into the UK through internationally sourced productions. So I've already talked to you about why our international clients might come and work in the UK rather than anywhere else in the world. It's well known within the industry that we have a suite of creative sector tax reliefs. They're very, very generous, very inclusive, very easily accessible. Why does government give us tax reliefs for film rather than for making cars? It's very, very easy to demonstrate both the financial incentive, but also the cultural and creative incentive. Excuse me. For every pound it costs the government in tax relief, it brings around about £13 back into the UK economy. So it's easy to demonstrate the value, and that's not to even talk about the cultural benefits of showing off British creativity around the world. As well as the tax relief, which is UK-wide. We also have regional and national funding for film and TV, which I'll go into a little bit later. One of the things that's recognised most about the UK is our talent, behind the screen and on screen. Lovely Idris Elba there from Luther, who's doing phenomenally well internationally, very well recognised internationally. But you won't switch on a US TV show without seeing a well-known British or UK actor, I should say, on there, not to mention the directors and writers and the behind-the-screen talent. We have, without doubt, the best crew base in the world. Our US clients are very happy and open to talk to us about that. And then we have VFX studios, UK-wide and post, award-winning. We'll go into a little bit more detail. And of course, the United Kingdom is packed full of very, very diverse locations. Talked a little bit about production. Everybody is aware of the likes of Pinewood Studios and maybe Warner Brothers Studios. We also have a real range of alternative studio space in the UK. You saw a clip of Game of Thrones over there. I don't know if anybody will know that that's actually filmed in something called Titanic Studios, which was where the Titanic was spray painted originally. It's got 90-foot height, huge big stages, which has now been working very, very successfully as a film and television studio, and they're just about to start shooting season 6 of Game of Thrones there, or they've just wrapped 6 and starting 7, one or the other. We also have those alternative spaces throughout the UK. We have a bottling factory down in Bristol. We have Ward Park Studios, which is an old factory up in Scotland, which is now home to Outlander, a massive Sony TV studio. And there are equally accessible and successful alternative studio spaces throughout the UK. We also have the specialist shooting facilities like underwater tanks, the huge paddock tanks, performance capture like Andy Serkis's Imaginarium, where you've seen the people on TV with the little blue dots all over them. And really, and say, we're increasing capacity all the time, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that later when I go on to talk about the challenges. We have unquestionably the largest concentration of VFX and post talent in the world. We're a tiny country and we punch far above our weight, especially in this area. And as it says there, VFX facilities have been Oscar nominated 9 out of the last 10 years, winning 5 times. And I think we've got at least 3 of the 5, if not 4 of the 5, Oscar nominated for VFX this year as well. So hopefully we'll have number 6. Cast and crew, I've talked a little about that already, and it's probably the most obvious thing. Excuse me. Star Wars, 2 new stars are John Boyega and Daisy Ridley there from Star Wars, and it doesn't end with on-screen. As I say, the behind-the-camera talent is amazing, and it's one of the big attractions for us bringing production to the UK. The other important issue is skills training. There's an organisation which is partly government funded, but it's match funded by industry, called Creative Skill Sets. We help work with them to identify gaps in skills in the UK, and then government works with industry to train up those skill gaps. Talk to you a little bit about the production hubs around the UK, those alternative spaces. These are the cities where most of the production tends to happen. Not exclusively so, locations shot throughout the UK, but the real production hubs, obviously London is a no-brainer, with Greater London outside, which is where the Pinewoods and Sheppertons and Leavesdens and Elstrees are all. Talk to you about the southwest. Wales has got an amazing infrastructure there. They've got Pinewood Studios Wales down there, but they've also got alternative stage space where they've had big TV shows shooting. Northern Ireland, I've already mentioned, an amazing base for productions. It's the only place outside of Greater London that has accommodated major US studio films, which is quite something to brag about. And I've talked to you about Scotland, where they've got Outlander shooting, just wrapped season 2 at the moment, which has been a massive game changer. I have been told by one of my Scottish colleagues that those dots in Scotland might not be entirely accurate, so I do apologise. Talked again a little bit about regional or national funding. Can I just ask, actually, before I go on, are there any producers in the audience, or you work for the film, TV industry? And do other people work for facilities? I just want to know how much detail to go into on the regional and national funding. Probably not a massive amount. Anybody that wants any more detail on this bit, I can talk to you later. We have a mix of commercial and public funding for film and television in the UK. I think it's pretty difficult anywhere in the world to make independently financed film. It might not feel like it for British independent producers, but there's actually quite a depth of different funds going on. Obviously, we've got the BBC films and Film for Creative Europe, which obviously is pan-Europe. Pinewood Pictures, they have both their own commercial fund, but also they work with the Welsh Government Media Investment Fund. BFI, which is the biggest public fund in the UK, and that covers the whole of the UK as well. And then we've got the nations. All of the nations have some form of production funding. So Northern Ireland, Wales and Scotland in particular have funds which are really set up to bring investment into the country, and it's based on what you spend in their particular areas, the local businesses you access, the local crew that you use. But they're all very accessible, and they all work in combination with the either EIS schemes or with the national tax reliefs. Talked a little bit about the tax relief. Again, I'm not sure how much detail to go into, but it's worth knowing about. If you are either producers yourselves or if you're selling a product, it's really, really worth you knowing a little bit about this. Excuse me, going all husky. Because this will help sell your products or services as well, because it's all based around activity physically in the UK. So I'll give you a little bit of detail about it, not too much. The basics of qualifying for all the creative sector tax reliefs, but the ones that the British Film Commission concentrate on, are the high-end TV tax relief and the feature film tax relief. So you have to qualify as a British project, and I'll go into a little bit more detail on that. For the high-end TV tax relief, there needs to be a budget of £1 million per broadcast hour minimum, but there's a kids' TV relief as well, which doesn't have a lower limit. Same with the broadcast animation, there's no minimum spend on those. It's available, like all tax reliefs in Europe. There is an 80% cap, meaning even if you spend 100% of your budget in the UK or in any European jurisdiction, we're only allowed to give tax relief on up to 80%. The headline value of the tax relief is 25%, and that's for all the tax reliefs. Anybody that's better at maths than me will tell you then the maximum you're going to get is 20p for every qualifying pound you spend in the UK. So that's the headline figure, and it's very, very inclusive. There's no cap on the amount which can be claimed. So within that 80% of your budget, however big your budget is, there's no limits within that. Projects need to qualify as British, either via a co-production treaty or via the cultural test. Cultural test, it sounds a bizarre thing to be associated with a tax relief, but I'll explain a little bit more about that. Again, it's to do with European state aid. Any European tax incentives need to be associated with a cultural product, not just an industrial one. Hence, a film is considered to be a cultural product. All films need to be intended for theatrical relief, and it's the intention that's important. So if you're making a film, but you're not lucky enough to get distributor, you can still claim your tax relief. It needs to be made so it could be distributed at a cinema. For any of the TV tax reliefs, they just need to be intended for broadcast, and that includes on the internet, so Amazon Prime or your Netflix and so forth. As I mentioned, there's a minimum spend of 10% in the UK. That has just been reduced from 25% to 10% just last year, and that was to include, to maximise elements of production in the UK, which is where your model comes in. Great example would be Interstellar. That one actually didn't qualify. So a great example would be Gravity, or it would be Exodus, God and Kings. That shot pretty much entirely in sandy places, surprise, surprise, in Fuerteventura in Spain. Lots of films shoot in Morocco for their dunes as well. But they still qualified as British, and they came back here, did all their VFX and post in the UK and qualified for that. So you can absolutely qualify by doing just some of your activity in the UK. And the activity included is anything from pre-production through to delivery, and I'll give you a bit more detail on that. Really important for anybody wanting to get a US distributor on board. If it's US IP, the UK production company that is responsible for actually physically making the film and that claims the tax relief on behalf of the studio, that UK company does not need to hold the IP. That can stay with the studio. So you don't have any of those complications with the US partner not wanting to work with the UK company. Interim claims are possible. This is massive, and it's quite unique to the UK, the UK's film tax relief or tax reliefs. You can set your own accounting periods. So that means if you're independently financed, you don't have one finance source, who would love that big chunk of money put in your bank account at the beginning of production. This means you can set your own accounting period. You can make a first claim at the end of principal photography, for example, and then claim back what you've earned in tax relief up till then, and literally use that to finish your feature film or your TV show, etc. It's quite a big deal. Qualifying expenditure. This is, again, very unique. I talked about the used or consumed. It's all elements which are costs have to be incurred or recharged through your UK company. And it's on all of those items there, pre-production, principal photography, post and VFX, which take place physically in the UK. But the key is it's irrespective of the nationality carrying that out. So if you've got Angelina Jolie in your film, not a bad thing to have. As long as she's been paid or her loan-out company is being paid through your UK entity, while she's in the UK, it's earning tax relief for that UK company. So it's a big deal, and that's irrespective. It's including all your above the line, and it's including any nationality, and that's utterly unique to the UK. The cultural test, we talked about this. So the cultural test, I love this, cultural hubs. In translation, this means the content of your film, which is the story. And I say film, but this is the same for TV. The cultural contribution, that's kind of the subtext of the film. And there are all sorts of things we talk about here. We talk about diversity. I don't know if there's any international colleagues here, but in the UK we have a pretty shocking standard of diversity in the UK film and television industry, unfortunately. It's something we're working on, but so where there are aspects of the production which involve any ethnic minorities in unexpected roles, so we have very, very few Black or Asian DPs, for example, there are points available for that. There's also on-screen diversity, so if there's positive representations of any minority or anything that breaks those stereotypes on screen, that's positively encouraged. One we love is the strong female lead. She's not being in those usual fairy tale roles, but it's the Lara Croft kind of a role. So it encourages that. The more straightforward points are given for if your content is either written by a Brit, and that's a national or resident, and it now includes European. So it's EEA, so European Economic Area. So you've got European content or a European-based writer, or your content has European subject matter, that all counts. And that's based on page count, if it's on screen, and the underlying material, you either need a chain of title, if it's about the author, nationality of the author, or the subject matter is fairly straightforward. Cultural hubs, that's where you make your film. That's your studios, your locations, your VFX, and your special effects. And then your cultural practitioners, this is what normal people call cast and crew. And again, that's all European. But what you have to remember is your qualification is separate from the tax relief. You qualify as British, and there's lots of European elements, but you're only going to get tax relief on physical activity within the UK. That's not European, has to be in the UK. Co-productions I've talked a little bit about. We have co-production treaties with various different countries. Some of them have never been used because they just don't need to be. There are practical non-treaty routes to co-produce with many countries. It just is a cheaper, easier way of doing it, but we have some very well-used treaties. The Canadian treaty is used massively. You can't access the federal Canadian tax relief, for example, without qualifying as an official treaty, but generally we'll have production service agreements between the UK and the other country, and that works very, very well. It's very flexible. But we do have those treaties. Oh, I just breathed really deeply, sorry. We have the other European, the other creative sector tax relief I talked about. We have video games, kids TV, broadcast animation as well, and I think there's a theatre and an orchestral one now as well, but we don't look after those, thankfully. I think I've got enough on my plate. So that's the good stuff. We are in a very, very good position at the moment. We hit over £1 billion for the second consecutive year in film production spend this last year. 2 consecutive years of over £1 billion, that's the first time that's ever happened. High-end television investment increased by 20%. The reason for that is it was quite new. The tax relief has been around in its various incarnations since 2007, so it's bedded in, it works very well, everybody knows how it works. The TV one only came in 2013, so there's further growth. The other thing about the TV is your major studio features pretty much always, apart from Northern Ireland, where I've used that example, pretty much they'll shoot around London and the southeast of England. TV shoots everywhere, really, really big shows, literally in every corner of the UK, all the nations, Northern Ireland, Wales, and Scotland, but also we've got Peaky Blinders up in Liverpool at the moment. We've got Poldark down in Bristol, Bottle Yard. There's masses of really, really big shows shooting everywhere, so it's not limited by being close to London, which means there's a lot of room to expand. It's quite exciting. So it all sounds very, very good, but the tax relief, all that does is keep us on a relatively level playing field. Every single developed nation in the world has a film tax relief now. It's it's ridiculous. Some of them don't have film industries, but they have a tax relief. So there is a lot of competition out there. So the biggest thing that we're doing at the moment, whilst we're obviously supporting a lot of the projects that are going on the ground, making sure they continue to go smoothly, we're also needing to make sure that the BFC and our public agencies, but key, the industry does not get complacent. We've been told that there's a few £1,000s in it as to where a studio chooses to go. They have untold amount of choice now. So the tax relief is amazing. Without it, we wouldn't probably have a film industry. It's a sad state of affairs, but there we go. But it just puts us on the level field. Given that level playing field, they'll come here because we've got the best crew in the world, the best talent. Talent travels, though, of course. The best facilities. I've talked about the VFX industry, which is a jewel in our crown. It really is phenomenal. The studios, the post. So we have a really unbeatable offer. We also have the English language. We have the City of London, where the stars love to live. We've got them in Notting Hill and Kensington, and their kids can go to English-speaking schools. So we can't take that for granted. But the key is we have this much edge, and if we get complacent, and if we get too expensive, we lose that edge. So one of our key messages is not to be complacent and not to take our current success for granted. And one of the issues we have, so that's the competition issue. Capacity issues. This is often spoken about, and a lot of our competitors love to say that England and the UK is full. We're never full. We are busy. And if somebody comes to us asking for 150,000 feet of studio space the next week, then we probably won't be able to accommodate it. But we have very, very big studio spaces in the UK, around the whole of the UK. So if you know clients that are looking for space, send them to us. Don't let them read the international trades that say the UK is full. We're very, very busy, though. And one of the other issues is skills. We've had a huge influx of US television, for example, which is brilliant. It's bringing amazing amounts of work to the UK and lots of jobs and creating lots of work for the industry. But we don't have that huge depth of crew base in regards to television, high-end US television. So we're having to do lots and lots of training in those areas. So that's one of the other things that we're having to deal with. Costs. Talked about it. When people are busy, when the country's busy, the costs tend to go up. I'm assuming that's the same in every industry, but it's definitely something that our clients have noted, and it's something that we urge the industry to keep in check. Everybody should be paid what they deserve, but we do need to keep that in check if we want to stay competitive. The exchange rate, we're at something like $1.41 to the pound at the moment. It's phenomenal. We've had a long time of a really beneficial dollar to pound exchange rate. It's great for bringing business into the UK. Not great for going on holiday to US. But all that needs to do is change, and we start to lose that competitive edge. So that's something, unfortunately, we don't have much control over. We've been up over $2 to the pound before, and you find the levels of production sinking quite significantly. So that is a big issue for us. Uncertainty. We are so lucky that we have a film-friendly government. I don't want to talk about politics at all. When it comes to the creative sector, though, we have a very, very supportive government. So we don't have to worry about that in regards to uncertainty. The tax relief, or all the creative sector tax relief, are cross-party. The Labour Party originally brought the tax relief in. The Conservative Party carried it on. So that's one place we don't have uncertainty. However, we have some new initiatives coming in. There's a new not sponsorship, or what's the word? The biz. Not scholarships. What's it we're talking about? Apprenticeship scheme coming in, which is going to impact on costs. Thank you very much. It's great having a colleague in the audience. So that impacts. There's going to be some changes with HMRC on personal taxation. Those can impact. So it's just things that we need to be aware of and try and mitigate where we can. Diversity. I've already talked about that. It's certainly anybody in the publicly funded end of the film and TV industry is very cognizant of this at the moment. BFI have now introduced a 3-tick scheme for their funding schemes, and as a funded partner, we will also be doing our best to to encourage diversity. It's a bit trickier for us because we service other people's projects, but we will be doing our best to incorporate that. And then sustainability. The TV industry and the film industry are actually really good at being green, relatively speaking, especially the US companies. They actually have a green person responsible for ensuring recycling is carried out and so forth. But it is something that we, again, as a public company, are very aware of and trying to encourage with our clients. And I think that's it. So it was a real massive gallop through the industry.